All right, everybody, welcome back to the Four Wide Podcast. This is episode 2, I do believe. I mean, you have the first episode, but it didn't really count. And then you had episode 1, episode 2. So here we are. Um, I'm Cole. Austin's here. Kent's
Hi.
here.
What's up?
There is someone noticeably not here.
My name Blake.
Should we? Actually, that was pretty spot on. Also, should we have a moment of silence for Blake? I don't
Yes,
know, maybe
yes.
not. Moments of silence are awkward on a podcast too, because it's like I'm always looking at my phone when a podcast gets quiet. I'm like, man, is someone calling me? Nah, it's not. Did it pause my? Did I lose
Yeah.
service?
We should have a moment of gagging for Blake since he's.
Oh,
I'll
someone
let
will
you
listen
take
to
the
this
floor on that one.
vomiting in their car.
Goodness.
But anyways, yeah.
Oh my
Oh, man.
gosh. Yeah, he got a little sick on the way home to the Clash, and it wasn't too great. I won't go into specific details because I don't know how
The linings of his intestines came out.
Yeah, he was a little queasy. Just I guess the old Greyhound bus was a little wishy-washy, too shaky for him, and he lost a little bit of Dario that he ate before he went to the track. I hate it for him. I really do. And he's just sitting there on the side of the road. The bus is in the background. I'm sitting there. He's holding his bag with his diecast and stuff. And this little butt thing, his butt pillow thing that he bought. I'd say, just give me your stuff, man. You're going to need both hands to have him on your knees for puking. This poor fella. I would like to point out he did not drink anything. He doesn't drink. And I don't think he even drank any water, so that's probably part of the reason. That's probably. But he is out today, so say a little prayer for Blake if you want to. If not, I would understand.
We're not praying for him.
This was self-induced. This was God's will.
Yeah.
Well, I pray away God's will.
I think it's we needed an episode to ourselves, just to kind of get this air out, all this Blake hatred out. You know what I'm saying? Nah, we're just kidding. We miss you, Blake, and I got all his stuff. We'll talk about. We were both there together, so therefore we kind of seen the same things, but we do have different opinions. Of course, we have different opinions on the matter. So, just a little business thing first. Make sure you follow the socials at 4Wide on both X/Twitter, Tweetybird, whatever you want to call it, and on Instagram. In addition to that, make sure you leave a review if you're enjoying the podcast. You don't even have to say anything. All you got to do is just click the little button. It's got the little stars. 1 star for really bad or 5 stars for really good. So, that's kind of how that works. But if you want to write a nice little detailed review, go ahead. Knock yourself out. I'm a writer myself, so.
I will not read it.
No, Austin will not read it. I will read it because I'm a writer. I might critique what you say, like you might have a comma missing or something, but other than that, feel free to just write a little paragraph. All right, so the first thing we're going to do today is, of course, we're going to recap the events from this weekend. A lot to recap, and we're going to try to conduce it a little bit, make it a little bit smaller of a recap, but I'm sure we're going to go off the rails, but I'm going to let Austin and Kent both speak first because they seen the broadcast side of it. I didn't get to see that. I have not gone back and watched replay. I don't even think NASCAR's posted up the either the Open or anything up on YouTube yet. I haven't checked. I hadn't had a chance to. But I will Austin is A, so we'll let him speak first.
Oh, man. I can't wait for NBC.
That's the equivalent of college football's week 0, and we're already saying that. Golly.
Oh, man. I really hate to be that guy.
But he's going to be that guy.
To talk about Fox in a negative light. But man, Mike Joy just needs to switch to talking about golf or something. I mean, it was not a good broadcast. It genuinely wasn't. There were multiple times where the camera just did not catch good angles of the track. I understand it's a small track, but the angles were not great, and I felt like Clint and Kevin were a little better together than they were through part of the first part of the year, but overall it was pretty boring. I could have left my TV on mute and it would have been more interesting as far as the broadcast goes. So from that perspective, it was about what I expected it would be. Ken, I'll let you speak to the Fox broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking. I mean, the extended highlights are on there, so you can probably see some big moments on YouTube and what they say as they call the race. Here's the thing. I remember turning on the TV for the Daytona 500 when I was, 6, 7 years old, right? And you've got Mike Joy, Larry Mack, and DW. And there's something to be said about the importance of chemistry in the booth. And these three guys, all three that are in the booth currently with Clint Boyer, with Mike Joy, with Kevin Harvick, all three guys are special and legends of NASCAR in their own way. So don't let what we're about to say take away from who they are or what they've done or meant for the sport. They don't have team chemistry in the booth. They just don't. It's tough. It's tough to watch. I mean, and Mike Joy and again, it's hard to say something without sounding disrespectful to a guy who NASCAR owes everything to. He is legend in the booth. He's going to go down as a Ken Squire type guy, right? I mean, he's going to go down as one of these greatest of all time, commentators in any sport, in my opinion. There's a time that comes where I think you have to be able to listen to yourself and go, maybe I just don't have the energy to do this anymore. And I don't know if it's that or what it is. And maybe he just needs to be surrounded by folks who have better chemistry with him. But when he called the last lap, literally, if I could just give you my impression, it was, this is the first race of the season, first checkered flag of 2025, not a points race. First checkered flag of 2025. Who's winning? NASCAR's most popular driver. And Chase Elliott.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. And here's how he calls it. Chase Elliott wins the clash at Bowman Gray. I mean, I would have paid money to hear NBC call that last lap instead. I mean, you just think about how much is going on here, the history. I mean, I used to hear, golly, if we could ever get Alan Bestwick back, golly, that guy's a stud. We just are struggling getting any energy from the booth on Fox. And then when we get energy, it's just not the appropriate time for it, or I don't know. It's odd. Now, when it came to their commercial breaks, I noticed their yellow flags. They didn't really have any yellow flags. It was, caution, red, but we're going to run laps until we get going again. And then, we drop the green. Now we're kept laps again. They rarely in those moments went to a commercial break. In those moments, they typically would show a replay of whatever the incident was. And, then you would watch the cars parade around a little bit and then green flags back out in the air. So the first half of the race, you're going, man, I didn't see too many. And then in the last half of the race, they waited until the green flag racing to say, now we're going Fox side by side. Now, I got to say, I am glad it was side by side. You saw every single green flag lap. Am I wrong? I mean, I'm pretty confident we saw every single green flag lap of the clash. So there is something to be praised about that. But why you do your side by sides in the second half of the race more frequently than you did in the first half of the race, when you had more cautions, you could have done full blown commercials in the first half of the race. And I don't know, maybe they were afraid they wouldn't get back on the air in time to show the green flag. Maybe that's the case. And, there's more that goes into it than I understand. But that, from a logistics standpoint, didn't quite make sense to me. But in short, just to summarize everything I said, you've got three incredible personalities in the booth that just don't have chemistry. And that's really all there is to say.
Yep. I would agree.
It could be one of those things, like you said, where maybe just the inclusion of one person might be able to, where that person could
Larry
bounce.
Mack.
We love Larry Mack.
Oh, man. Legend.
I'll tell you what, Larry Mack's one of those, just good, honest guys. I've actually sent him some cards in the mail to get signed before, and he's actually wrote me a letter back.
Wow.
My grandpa actually passed away. My grandpa passed away that year, and I just mentioned it in my letter, just kind of talk about how much my grandpa enjoyed NASCAR back in the day and everything, and he would send his condolences and everything. It was handwritten. I mean, it was awesome. That's just the kind of guy he is, and he does bring that passion. You can tell. So the inclusion of someone like that, and like you said, it's not necessarily just a Kevin, a Clint, or a Mike Joy thing. It might just be them all working together, where it just feels like there's essentially if it's like a cord, there's like a small hole. In that small hole, you're losing voltage. You know what I'm saying? Like you're losing that enthusiasm. So
Yeah. And I'll say this too. As much as I rag on the guy, I'm going to keep saying, as much as I hate him on the racetrack, when the time comes for Joey Logano to hang it up, which if you saw his hairline pre-2024, you thought it was coming soon. Post-2024, you thought, maybe he's going to have second to win like his hairline got. But, but I'm telling you, Joey Logano is going to be incredible in the booth one day. If you've ever heard him calling an Xfinity race, I think he's NASCAR's next DW. I mean, that's how excited I am for that guy to get into the booth one day with the energy that he brings to a broadcast.
And he knows his stuff, too.
Absolutely. Well, and he comes from having recently raced in, I don't know how long it's been since he's been behind the wheel of a truck, but I know every now and then he still gets behind the wheel of a Xfinity car. Bristol Dirt. That's right. And he won that race, right? He's got relative recent experience across NASCAR's top 3 series and is able to just call races like, in my opinion, like no one's business. And but it's going to take, and that's what, honestly, I mean, when you listen to the guys on the NBC broadcast, they've got a little bit of chemistry. They're like, man, we're getting hyped for this together. We're getting excited about this. And especially when Junior was on there, they were just Junior was going to bring some excitement to it that not many folks could. And, I think Fox was really hoping that Clint Boyer was going to be the next DW, but DW could say some things and crack some jokes as a, multi-time champ, as a Daytona 500 champion who had won, over 80 Cup races on NASCAR circuit. And Clint Boyer's won 14 races, and that's it. I mean, like, he just doesn't have the criteria to really crack some of the jokes, because here he is at the end of the day, and it's like, I mean, Austin Dillon about has equaled his win total. So, I mean, it's just like, at the end of the day, he just doesn't have that big of a, I don't know. I don't think he was just ever that big of a name on the track. And while he's got the personality, he doesn't have the criteria. So, I don't know. There's a lot that goes into it. I think Fox, gambled the first time they put their 3 guys in the booth for the 2001 broadcast of the Daytona 500 and absolutely hit a home run. I mean, they hit a grand slam with the 3 I just mentioned, LaJoy, not LaJoy, with Mike Joy, with Mike Joy.
He just knocks it into the wall. That's what he does.
Yeah, LaJoy's going to be in the booth before long, too. Anyways.
Well,
selling hot dogs?
He actually is. He's going to be a part-time analyst this year.
There you go. He's got a fun personality. I mean, it'll be cool to watch.
Just say, that part of the wall right there? I hit that really hard.
Hey, if you look hard enough, you can actually see what's left of my brake rotor right there. They forgot to pick it up 2 years ago under caution, and it's still there. Anyways, no.
Anyway.
But when they had those 3 initially, man, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And maybe we're just chasing something that Fox is never going to have again, that no broadcast is ever going to have again. But we're always going to remember.
Get rid of the cartoon driver faces.
It's the one thing I agree with Denny Hamlin on. The one thing.
It looks so unprofessional. Like, sorry, rant over. But that.
No, you're good.
I'm sorry. Brad Keselowski doesn't have that 6-pack. Doesn't. I'm sorry, burst someone's bubble. He's got the dad bod, full swing. I'm speaking with the dad bod, but nothing's wrong with it. Nothing's wrong with it.
All right, Cole, let's hear your side.
Also, just quick little question for you guys. How was the racing side? I know that you said the replays and stuff were kind of like rough, but did they focus more on like the upfront battle, which I mean, there really was an upfront battle for a lot of the races, more of a lot of gap. But when were they like going back in the field and watching, because there was some really good racing in mid-pack. Like they were racing super hard.
Go ahead, Austin.
Trying to remember. They highlighted a lot on the front when it was Chase and Denny battling for the lead. Mm-hmm. And then once Chase looked like he was taking a lead, they focused more on like 2nd through 5th. They went to the back some. Mainly they were following Blaney because, Blaney had that ridiculous run from last to 2nd. And so they were following him a good bit on his run. But, I don't remember really seeing a ton from middle of the pack. It seemed like really they focused a lot on the top 10.
Okay, I got you. All right. Well, you kind of echo the same sentiment there.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the racing was good. I thought, I thought they did a good job of showing where the racing was at. But, they're also, when Chase Elliott's leading the race, and I'm speaking as a guy who, I'm a William Byron fan, but as a,
Hendrick lover.
as a Hendrick lover, but someone who also pulled for Chase at the beginning of his career and is from the state of Georgia. I like to see other Georgia guys do well in things, it's hard for me to complain when you show Chase Elliott nonstop at the front of the field, just running away from folks. But there's so much beating and banging going on. And this is something I didn't get to a short track race until long after I should have. But one thing I realized once I got to a short track race is exactly how much action is going on all over the track that you don't see on a broadcast, and you're never going to see because you can only have one or two camera angles up at a time. So I'll say this, the racing was good on TV, I thought. It's just always going to be better in person, especially in a place like Bowman Gray.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I mean, me and Blake both attended both days, so I have Blake's stuff written down here. I mean, my goodness, this man had a lot to say, and I really lazy, so I don't think I'm going to get about half of it. But I tried to paraphrase it the best I could. So he said, and I'll echo this, the atmosphere at this racetrack was a 10 out of 10. I've never been to a event, not NASCAR event, a event that has the amount of people. So 16,000 is what they have listed as the seating capacity. Now, I've heard 17,000. I don't know how many people got in there, like I don't know how many tickets they actually sold, but every single individual in that stadium was standing up for like 85% of that race. That's
awesome.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that. Like, you go to like a football game, you'll have a lot of people standing up, like, NFL, college, a lot of passionate people. But every single person in that stadium was diehard, and you could tell it. So the atmosphere was absolutely amazing. And Blake said the only thing that he said was close to it was North Wilkesboro the first year that they were there. And Kent was there, so he can kind of like talk about how, it was very cool. Like, it very throwbacky.
I didn't go to the All-Star race, but I was at the very first truck race, and that was in 2020, when it was kind of at the peak of its decay. See, my wife is from that area. She went to high school in Wilkesboro, and so we were driving through there, and I just pulled off the road off 421 there, and we drove a circle around it. So to see it there in the midst of its pretty heaviest state of decay, and then to pull up on race day and see it in that shape, but then also to see the pageantry that went into it, it felt so nostalgic. Like, that's a place I will take Wesley to one day, and I'll say, this is about as close as you're ever going to get to feeling the way that I did when I walked up to Atlanta Motor Speedway in 2004 for my first ever race. It's about as close as it's going to get. Maybe Talladega these days. It's coming back. It's really, it's big time. Talladega is, and Atlanta's a lot better than it used to be. Everything is better than it used to be. But the way that it was packed out at North Wilkesboro, smaller capacity, but still full. And then everything that they put into that race was awesome. But, watching on TV and seeing Bowman Gray, seeing the lighting and seeing, I've been in Sanford Stadium on a Saturday night in Athens when they light up that whole stadium red, and it's you and it's 93,000 people screaming at the top of your lungs going, wow, it's just the coolest thing. And so to be at a racetrack where they're doing that and you're seeing the light, just the way that it, reflects off the cars there on the track and different things like that. I cannot imagine the excitement to see how much how many modern things they brought to that event. But at the end of the day, it was Bowman Gray. It was old school Bowman Gray racing. And I think NASCAR just knocked it out of the park. I think for the way they depicted, like, I could tell y'all were having a good time just by watching it on TV. I was like, that's got to be awesome. I want to buy a ticket next year if it's back there. When I see the
Mhm.
price, I may change my mind, but I do. And
That's
then
what a credit card's for. Come on now.
I mean, yeah. All right. So look, we're, we're gonna
I know you can't say anything right now.
we're gonna
Catching
talk.
some stairs.
We're gonna,
Blink twice. You'll buy a ticket on your credit card.
hey, next week we're gonna have Dave Ramsey on, and we're gonna talk about. I was kidding. So, but no, I mean, it just looked cool. So I just can't imagine what y'all had to have been standing there thinking. And I would assume y'all had both been to modified and late model stuff before they did all that to the track. So I'm imagining in your head, you're thinking, man, I've been to this place thinking there's no way the Cup Series could ever do anything here. And then you walk in and go, wow, that's pretty doggone cool.
Plus, even like when the modifieds were running the day before, like when they were doing their Madhouse Classic, it felt new because you have the new safety barriers and everything, and they have them nicely painted. And then, by, lap 15, all the nice paint's gone and there's black marks all across the white parts and the red parts. It was amazing. But so Blake did say his experience at the Madhouse Classic was great. I couldn't speak to that. I watched what happened on lap 1, and then I watched what happened on like lap 4 when they wrecked. And I looked at Blake. I said, "Hey, Dylan's having a signing at like 2:45. I'm going to go outside and go get this diecast autograph. I actually have it with me. It's the Darlington throwback, Austin Dillon, and had him sign in red.
So when should Austin expect that in the mail?
No,
I'm just kidding.
I mean, I think the Richmond one would be a better purchase for him, so he could see the cookout shake all over it and everything, and the confetti. Actually got Austin to make a video for Austin while I was there, and Blake wanted me, and I think Kent wanted me to post it up on the Instagram, but I decided I was going to be a good guy and not do that to Austin because I know what he would have done in return. I was like, I ain't trying to burn no bridges that we don't have already. So, but the heat races, the first and the fourth heat race were absolutely amazing, and the two in the middle were like more of what I would expected to actually happen at the Clash, which kind of when people got spread out. Honestly, I think Reddick's was the third heat race. I might be wrong with that, but I honestly thought he had the best car out of all of them watching the heat race because he like absolutely gapped his heat race. Like he was about to lap people in his heat race. But I mean, it was obvious to see once the actual racing started who had the best car, which we'll get to. But so let's see, what else does Blake got here? Of course, tires. How can I forget about tires, which I didn't. They did bring those Martinsville tires back, and they played a humongous role in the racing. And you could really see that when you seen Denny Hamlin going to the outside on that track. That you didn't see that during the heat races. They couldn't do that. It was singular racing, and if they could get to the bumper of somebody and take them out, that's how they're going to have to pass. But to see Denny Hamlin actually make a couple of successful passes through that outside really displayed the tire. And honestly, that has to be the tire that they have to bring to majority of the short tracks this year. It has to be.
I think it was Boyer. He said after about 20 to 25 laps, they were losing about 4/10, and then add about another 10 to that, and they were losing about 6/10. So we didn't expect that much fall off, and we talked about it last week, but it was pretty significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only tire I can think about that was more like fall off was the Bristol tire from the spring, right? The spring Bristol race, is that right?
We don't want that again. That was too bad.
Austin's a big hater of the spring tire, and
I was a fan.
Blake is a huge fan of the spring tire.
That was not enjoyable.
Which Hamlin won that race, right?
Yep.
So I hated it. No, I'm just kidding. I was a fan of the tire. I was a fan of the racing. I thought it was good. I mean, yeah.
But if it comes to a tire management race, Denny Hamlin is going to probably win that race. So that's why it surprised me when Chase actually didn't win the race. I think Denny just used up too much too soon when he was trying to make that outside pass. And then you had someone like Blaney had to go all the way up the field. And by the time he got up there to Elliott, he had the best car going up the field because I pulled up the NASCAR app, even though I was fighting for the 1 megabyte of data between the 16,000 people there. There's no internet there. So, but I was looking at the lap times, and it was obvious to see that he was faster until those last few laps when he just died off. He couldn't compete. So it just came down to like who had the stronger motor package handling, and Chase ended up winning that. So the race itself was really good. Few key battles I wanted to mention. This is just throughout the day. Dude, Ty Dillon and Austin Dillon, the brothers going after it in their heat races and whatnot, was absolutely crazy. I don't know if you guys got to watch all the heat races or not.
Did not.
But they were using each other up like crazy. I mean, usually it's Austin being the instigator of that kind of stuff, but it was Ty because Ty actually had a really good car. Like, I was surprised how fast that car was. When he was doing his practice laps, he was actually, I think he was P3 for speed, which is, you don't expect that.
Is Ty full-time in that 10 colleague car this year? Is that a part-time?
He's full-time this year.
You know, I've always wondered about Ty. He and Austin both did all right in the series coming up, but I think it's safe to say that RCR has the best of the best equipment in the Xfinity series. In my opinion, you look at even what they're still doing now, they're pretty top-notch. But I don't know. Ty was always the one of he and Austin that I always wondered what happened if he got the right shot. I don't know.
Especially when he got up to the Cup level and he was driving like the 13 Gecko car and stuff. You know, it's like, I mean, he's going to do the best for what he's got. And when it was the restrictor plate tracks, he usually was up front. You know, he's a really good draft type driver. So.
Was it he that 1 year at the Roval when they were, you know, doing rain tires and the regular tires for one of the first times on a road course, that he was the first to make the switch and actually won a stage? Or am I thinking of somebody else, or do y'all even remember?
I couldn't confirm it myself, but
I'll have to look that up.
You're the historian, so
I know. I'm just gonna make it up. He won that stage. I won't look it up. But anyways,
Denny Hamlin won a championship.
Yeah, we're not gonna speak that into existence.
But in regards to the atmosphere of the track, make sure I got everything and Blake's done. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah. Buses sucked. I kid you not, guys. Me and him were out there for an hour waiting to get on a bus in the freezing cold because they did not have anyone or any signage to navigate where the buses were picking up. So you just had 3 different lines of people. You had people going down blocks, other people going up the block, and other just waiting right there at the entranceway. And when we got out, there was some buses that came down the block right below the racetrack instead of going up. So we just sat in that line because we thought there's going to be buses coming back. And I swear, guys, there was like 23 buses and none of them stopped where we were going. They just kept going all the way up. So we had to change lines, and that was after sitting 40 minutes waiting because we were like the first ones in line. Like we were ready to get on our bus, and then we just sat there and watched buses go by and by. And I heard some pretty tense words from, I mean, people that were probably really happy about the racing, but they were talking, they had like hired cross guards. So you have like the police officers, and then you also have the people that navigate the buses with the glow sticks, essentially. Mm-hmm. And they were legit telling these people, they were chewing them out and said, we are not going to come back because they were like freezing their butts off. They had people that were disabled that didn't have a walker or anything. They were just standing, which, I mean, I guess you can't really put that on, of course, not the cross guards. That I really felt bad for one girl because she's sitting there explaining that the buses pick up all the way up the road, and the other people were pissed off because they've been sitting in line for 45 minutes waiting for a bus that hadn't been coming. But I felt really bad for her because that's not her job. Her job is to legit make sure the traffic goes in and goes out. So that should have been a instance where they should have multiple people that are hired from the bus organization, whoever they're chartering from, to push up to tell them, hey, the line's up here. You guys don't need to be sitting down there. And if they would have done that, they might have saved themselves a lot, which, if people don't come next year because of that, there's going to be someone that's going to take their ticket next year. If it does come back, but they do need to figure that out. It was insanity. And I believe that might be a partial of the reason why Blake got sick, because he's sitting out there in the cold for that long. But, yeah, that was his main gripe. He said that North Wilkesboro had a lot better job of constructing the trams and stuff, and especially if you're paying $95 for 2 days of parking, you shouldn't have to wait an hour in the freezing cold to get on a bus, go back to a parking lot that's like 4 minutes away. So that's kind of our combo rant, because Blake had a little bit more constructive. Mine's more of just I was very irritated, but I wasn't super freezing or anything. But he said Marcus Smart might have a couple ideas for him if they want to, take some pages from North Wilkesboro. So from the fan atmosphere of it, I am the type of guy that likes to go get autographs and stuff. The fan access was what you would expect for a track. It was not. The first year I went to North Wilkesboro was probably the best year of fan access, because you literally had the drivers walking in and out of the track, and you could get everybody's autograph. Second year, they kind of fixed that, where they put more guardrails up, it did deteriorate a little bit of the rating personally for me. I feel like fan access is what NASCAR is known for, and they should try to maximize that the best way they can. Of course, when it comes to legality issues, which they said it may have been a legal issue where, someone could have got hurt or something like that, I get, but you do need to try to maximize that. But, you had every single Hendrick driver made an appearance at the NASCAR fan experience stage, which is an anomaly most of the time. Usually you get 2 or you get 3. You don't get all 4. Of course, they were split up on different days. I actually got to meet Alex Bowman again and got 2 of my cars signed by him. I got to meet William Byron again, and Blake got Kyle Larson's autograph on his commemorative Hendrick car that has the 269 wins, I think it was. That blacked out car has all the drivers' names and how many wins they have and whatnot, when Larson broke that record when he won at Charlotte. And it was a great experience in regards to that aspect of it, but it wasn't the best I've ever had. But, like I said, you can't really compare North Wilkesboro to that in regards to that, but by far the best atmosphere I've ever been at. It's like the equivalent of the Cameron Crazies, I would say, was what was in that racetrack. They were absolutely insane. And I swear to you guys, I've never seen this before. So let's just say that if you're a Ricky Stenhouse Jr. fan and you were in that building and you were wearing Ricky Stenhouse Jr. merch, you might have got mugged on the way out. Because this comes back to the old nice Fox broadcast. The replay that they had absolutely sucked. Even Burt Myers just when they went up to him, he's like, I can't see nothing. It's if the driver can't see it, how do you think your fans feel? And I get that it's a small track and everything, but the amount of cameras that were there, they should have at least had one decent angle. Shoot, build you a little catch fence, like a shark cage or something, and put someone in the middle of the infield with the grass or something. I don't know. Of course, don't do that. That would be a terrible decision, but there should have been something. And to not be able to see that, but the fans were so mad because Burt Myers is like that. Like we spoke about, he is that legend. He is that guy. Everybody, either you love him or you hate him, but that's a grassroots guy. When Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got around to the front stretch after what happened, it was a literal wave of middle fingers, and you could watch them as he went across the track. And I swear to you guys that 90% of each section was flipping him off. It's the most middle fingers I've ever seen in my life.
There's one time that I thought that when I saw, a Bush blow a tire at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and I thought, that's the most I've ever seen in my entire life. But no. But, to try to help some people understand this, this is the equivalent almost, maybe, imagine, I don't even know how to describe it. This would be the equivalent of somebody, that you watch race every single weekend, your hometown track, or maybe someone that you watch play,
High school
really
football.
high school
stuff like-
football or something like that, and they finally get their shot in the NFL, and they go out there, and on the first play of their career, they someone hits them
Cheap
helmet
shots
to
on-
helmet,
Yeah.
and it takes them out for the rest of the season. I mean, it's like, man, Burt Myers got his shot, right? Like, this was not a points race. He wasn't out there gonna try to make bank or anything like that. What he was gonna get was a national platform and to get to drive the peak vehicle and stock car racing in the United States of America. And he got that experience, and he was able to until Ricky. But, all right, so Ricky Stenhouse has earned a fair reputation. Being
aggressive.
Being one who, if he is within a zip code, yes, if he's in the same zip code, you're gonna, man, that was Ricky's fault, and so I
Kind of
think
like the Hocevar syndrome, honestly.
Yeah.
there's a little bit of everything going on there. But, and I have not seen the clip that you were talking about where you or one of y'all texted in that group chat today and said, y'all,
It was me.
Burt might have wrecked himself a little bit on that one. Like that was probably, that might have been Burt, which would make sense. Burt's never driven one of these cars before. He's never driven, to my knowledge, professionally anything that size that has that kind of, now, the modified that he drives gets around that track a whole lot faster than the Cup cars do, but he's never driven anything like that before, and so it would make sense. He wouldn't know where his boundaries are. So, it makes sense.
I wouldn't say he necessarily wrecked himself. It was more just like a racing incident to me. So essentially the camera that I saw, it was posted on Twitter, X, whatever, and it was the in-car, and you could just see it was just like one of those racing deals. And Burt Myers was making his way up the field because those cars are all leveling out because of those tires. And he knew that track better than anybody. So he was bumping and running or whatever. And then it happened. He got wrecked and it looked bad. From in person seeing it, it did look like he absolutely just took him out. But from Ricky's camera's POV, it definitely didn't seem necessarily super intentional. It might have been, but it's really hard to tell without seeing like the logistical, like throttle and stuff like that. You can kind of listen to it, but when you're at a short track like that, it's really hard to tell. But yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing that happened. Of course, you had the Ty Gibbs and the Justin Haley thing where Ty Gibbs was about ended up in the front row of Section 12 trying to do a somersault. But past that, there was nothing that insanely crazy, but that was the one thing where I was like, when it happened and you could watch the crowd, it was like just transcended almost that moment. Like, you're like, this is the real deal kind of deal thing. So it was really cool. And then when Burt Myers came by in the safety vehicle, he hung out the window, and instead of giving the middle finger to Ricky Stenhouse, he gave him the thumbs up, which was like, to me, it was like Burt Myers saying, hey, it's just racing. It's Denny Hamlin. It's just short track racing kind of deal thing. Austin does that probably the best out of all three of us.
Hey, just short track race.
Yeah. Especially the facial recognition of what Austin can do with that. It's just superb. But anyways, I think that we touched the Clash enough, and we're going to kind of set up the Daytona 500. I just got a few key points, and we'll kind of talk about it. I'm going to try to get through the list, and then we'll kind of talk about what we really want to talk about. So, of course, I feel like the main storyline going into this 500 is that Junior Motorsports has made their first bid into the 500 with the number 40 car. That's with Justin Allgaier. Justin Allgaier, of course, being pretty much, I would say, Junior Motorsports' poster boy. He is the champion. But on top of that, they've had multi-time champions. They have like William Byron and stuff win, but Allgaier's that guy that's paid his dues throughout the years. And to get this shot with a car that should be well funded, essentially being a fifth Hendrick car, what I've been explained to, it should be a really decent ride. So another thing that did come up is Mike Wallace actually was not allowed because he was essentially not found to be have enough seat time on big enough tracks to be considered to be a driver that would be essentially safe to be on the racetrack, which, I mean, you can say what you want to. You had people like Morgan Shepherd driving on the racetrack, but you don't know how much seat time Morgan Shepherd put in throughout the years to be able to continue to get those rides. So, of course, Kyle Busch kind of has a chance to be able to do what Dale Earnhardt Sr. did, and that's kind of been the thing that I've heard the most here lately is, he can essentially win that first Daytona 500 that you would think that he deserves. Kent said it before on the podcast. He's put a lot of miles into Daytona. He's put a lot of good cars at Daytona and not got that 500 win. So, of course, all the ride changes in general. You have people like Michael McDowell going to Spire, Noah moving to front row. You got Todd Gilliland changed his number from 34 or 38 to 34. You got a whole bunch of movement. And, of course, if you watch the Clash, you kind of have a general understanding of where most of the drivers went. But not everybody watches the Clash because it is an expedition. Again, it's the Lewis and Clark expedition race. I'm just going to start calling it. I'm going to own it. I'm going to own it. But,
Going to expedition, boys.
yeah, yep, I'm going to go get my little horse ready, and I'm going to start going up the road here with my little buggy. But, yeah, I think there's a few more open cars and whatnot to talk about as well. So you have Corey LaJoie coming back in the 01 for Rick War Racing. I will say that Brown, I know that we didn't mention him. He had a lot harder road to move up in regards to the Clash. His car was nowhere near as good as Burt Myers, and Burt Myers' car wasn't that good either. Like, when you were looking at the practice times, they were off like by 0.75 of the leader, and the next closest standard driver would be like 0.3.
And as I recall, didn't we expect that to be the other way around, given the fact that we thought Tim Brown being in a Rick Ware car would have a little bit of an advantage given their little bit more experience of putting a vehicle together on a track. And either he just wasn't quite as ready as Burt, or it just didn't pay off as much as we thought it would.
Yeah, I think that's what Blake did say. He said that the 50 car felt like it would be the one that would struggle the most. I honestly thought the 66 would be, and it showed it. Garrett Smithley had a really rough time too. But between the two legends, I would say that we would have thought Brown would have been a little bit better, but it was the polar opposite. So I don't know, man. I know what Corey wants to do, and I respect him for wanting to stick his neck out and want to be at that top level, but I really do feel like an Xfinity ride or a truck ride full time would really bolster that confidence, and not wanting to go down to essentially, I'm not going to say that he's not trying to pay his dues, but more or less him not willing to even like do partial rides down there. You know what I'm saying? Maybe split the season or whatever. Instead, he's going to go to the broadcast booth, that's the avenue that he wants to go. We need good broadcasters. We've already stated that. But I just don't know. I really don't know, and I hope it works out for him. Of course, you have J.J. Yeley. He's going to be driving for NY Racing. And then you have Anthony Alfredo back in the 62 for Beard Motorsports. Chandler Smith. Anthony. Yeah, I do too. He's a good guy and a solid personality too. If you ever follow him on social media.
Fast pasta.
Yep, the old Alfredo. He was actually sponsored by an Alfredo sauce, which is pretty cool. I mean, what else could you want? So Chandler Smith's going to be taking over that 66 for MBM, which Chandler Smith's an amazing driver. But after watching how that car performed at the Clash, I would be very concerned in regards to that. And then BJ McLeod's going to be in that 78 for Live Fast Motorsports. So he's going to be taking Mark Truex Jr.'s number. The old school Mark Truex Jr. number. That's a tough mantle, man. It really is. Of course, you got Truex in that 56 for Tricon. and you got JJ in the 84 for Legacy. And the one guy that I have not mentioned, I will let the IndyCar professional Austin Morris pronounce this name for me.
Helio Castroneves.
For the number 91 for Trackhouse.
So my very first, this is just random, but my very first race I ever went to, I told y'all about it, and I said there was an IROC race that immediately followed it. He was in that IROC race, and at Atlanta in those IROC cars, it raced like Daytona does because they were drafting around that track, low horsepower package, and so he's got some drafting experience. This is going to be interesting, but I'm excited about his personality being there for the Daytona 500 because he's a cool dude. He's a cool dude.
Well, and it's a perfect, being able to market IndyCar into NASCAR and NASCAR being able to market IndyCar. It's a good come and go kind of deal thing because supporting racing is crucial. It really is.
NASCAR doesn't think that, though. But.
It does seem like that. It really does, especially when you're trying to make sure that if a driver misses because of that, and then you almost not allow a waiver to go through, kind of speaks to that, which I get it from the standpoint of you want your driver to be committed to your sport, but you also want to market to different avenues. So you're essentially building the sport. So I get both sides of it, but I definitely lean the marketing side, especially coming from, I did a minor in sports management, which is a marketing minor, and that's just like marketing 101. If you can get your hands in more baskets, why aren't you? I guess that's my little mini rant. I know someone had a mini rant on here. There's my mini rant. But what's y'all's big storyline? What's y'all's big thing coming into this Daytona 500 for you guys? Y'all are both muted.
I thought Austin was going to start talking, but now I guess I'll say something. There's a lot,
Sorry.
We got some technical difficulties. I saw Austin's lips move, and I was like, someone's going to tell him. Someone's got to tell him. I can't because I'm muted, but someone's got to tell him that anyways. But no, there's a lot going into it. I love seeing, we had gotten away from there really being, I think the last few years, maybe 42, 43, 44 cars had attempted it. We're adding another one this year. There's 45 attempting the 500 this year. It's always a good thing. It's going to sound awful, but, just as far as how this sport is, it's always a good thing when you're sending guys home because there's not enough spots and people are failing to qualify. It's a good thing because it means that there are more. Demand. Exactly. There are more people that are wanting to be a part of this sport. I mean, I remember when you would have, 55 cars show up to Atlanta to try to qualify and make their race, and they're sending 12 cars home. So, with the charters and everything, it's probably not going to get quite back to there again. But 45 cars showing up for the 500, that is a wonderful thing. And there might be 41 roll off in the race, depending on whether or not Helio Castroneves actually makes it or has to rely on his provisional. So, that's going to be interesting to watch. Looking at some of these names, there are a lot of names of guys on here who have, there are several folks who have won it. There are a lot of guys who are not full-time, obviously not your full-time Cup guys. Some that are kind of on their way out of the sport, like you got guys like LaJoy. He might still be living in denial. You got guys like, obviously, Jimmy Johnson, who's like, man, I've accomplished everything that there is to accomplish in NASCAR. You also got, Martin Truex Jr., which, by the way, that 56 car that he's driving, correct me if I'm wrong, but the font on that 56 is awful close to what he raced at MWR.
Really close.
So that's going to be a throwback in and of itself if y'all remember those 56 Napa know-how days from back in the day. I mean, obviously, it's not the Napa car, but still it's going to look very familiar to folks who were around, 13 years ago watching NASCAR. That's crazy to say. That was 13 years ago. But, I think going into this, Daytona is so unpredictable that it's hard to say what the big story is going to be until it happens. And then it's huge, right? I mean, last year, the big story was, had they been able to, if they would have waited 2 seconds, not even 2 seconds, half a second, to throw the caution, you're getting a Daytona 500 championship hat instead of me as a Bowman fan.
Yeah,
that's
oof.
And so I remember, and you and I both there had to sit there for about a lap with our hearts pounding, going, did my guy win it? Did my driver win it? Did my driver win it? And one of us had the agony of defeat, and one of us had the thrill of victory. And, you know, you hate to see a Daytona 500 decided like that. You know, I go back and I rewatch. I missed it. I know Cole did something,
I
but
said
anyway.
2 times I was good.
Bless your heart. Yeah, no, that was 2024 was brutal.
Both of our
to you.
drivers.
Yeah, golly. Both of our drivers.
That's
We got
tough.
them cornered. Sorry, man. We love you. But anyways, but all that, you know, it's going to be hard to know. I think we're going to be jumping on here, you know, a couple days after the 500 going, man, can you believe that? So, you know, it's going to come down to how is this race going to end? Is it going to race? Is it going to end under caution? I mean, it seems like every 500 has ended under caution lately. Man, we need a 500 that ends under green. And then honestly, you know, with the last stage of the race, man, it would be awesome if that thing just really drew out and was long. And then you had your lead pack of about 10 cars and they're all fighting for it. And so you don't have to worry about them being 4 wide, 5 deep. You know, it's just, hey, we got 10 of the best handling vehicles on the track. They're going to go and try to win it. And if they crash, they crash. But, you know, they tend to, when you have those cars at the front, they've got the handling. They're going to be able to get through it without crashing typically. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to see. I'm looking forward to seeing if handling becomes an even bigger factor this year than it has been in the past. The track is getting bumpier. You know, it's getting some grooves in it and stuff like that, you know, and so I remember even in 2019 when I rode around the track, it still felt like, man, this is smoother than the ride on the interstate to get here. Now it's just by looking at it, it doesn't look like that's the case. Having, you know, driven this track on iRacing, since they had scanned it in the last couple of years, I also remember thinking, you know, all right, this is getting a little bit harder to handle car on here again. You can't just, you know, stay wide open in the middle of a pack the whole time anymore and expect it to stick. I mean, you're gonna, you know, start to lose handling on that thing later on in a run. So I'm looking forward to seeing if handling can become an issue. Handling has been an issue lately at Atlanta because Atlanta's track is the way they paved it. It wears out faster, but it's also because it's shorter. The corners are tighter. You got to have a good handling car. In my opinion, that makes the racing better. And so I'm hoping that makes the racing better. And I think you're going to have a guy who can have a well set up race car who also can handle it well. And so I think if this thing goes long without a crash towards the end, it's going to be a veteran that wins it. And, you know, the last few years, it feels like veterans winning the Daytona 500 is just kind of a thing of the past. You look at your guys in the field with a Daytona 500 win. Austin Cindric, Austin Dillon, Denny Hamlin, veteran, maybe future champion, I don't know. Joey Logano really is the only one on this list so far. Yeah, I'm going to say the only one on this list who has won the Daytona 500 and is an active, you know, future Hall of Famer with championships to back it up. So Denny Hamlin's going to be in the Hall of Fame, but just without the championships. Hamlin, Logano, I mean, after that, I mean, William Byron, and I hope he has a Hall of Fame career, but it's still too soon to tell with him. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he's not going to the Hall of Fame unless he does something crazy in the next couple seasons. Michael McDowell, love the guy. Not really. And then you got a guy like Jimmy Johnson, who obviously is one of the GOATs of NASCAR.
Already a Hall of Famer.
Already a Hall of Famer. He's not full-time in this sport. And so when you talk about active guys, so here are some guys who have not won it. Ready? Guys who have not won it that you feel like should have won one by now. Brad Keselowski.
Man, it's always around and wrecking people too. But I mean, that's
He's
just,
aggressive.
that's just what comes with drafting. I mean,
Absolutely.
you're going to wreck people.
This is Chase Elliott's beginning of his 10th season in NASCAR now?
I think it's his 9th full year.
9th full year?
Yep.
So, you're starting to wonder, is he going to win one? Is he going to win one? I mean, I know that it's crazy. He's still young, but you're wondering, is he going to win one? Kyle Busch. we're just talking about it, man. He needs that on his resume. He doesn't need it on his resume. He's a Hall of Famer, but you expect him to win one. You've got guys. Let's see here. A lot of these guys are. I'd love to see Martin Truex just absolutely pull the upset and win this thing. That would be sick. But those are some guys that you kind of expect. Man, they're gonna need that. And of course, Kyle Larson too. He's got about. He started racing just before Chase Elliott did. He's got about maybe one or two more attempts in this race than Chase does. And you're also wondering with Kyle Larson, man, is he gonna get it?
He doesn't do well at plate tracks, though. That's the thing. That's not his cup of tea. He hates plate tracks.
Yeah.
And when he does good, he always steps on his own foot. I mean, he'll be up front, and then just either someone wrecks him or something happens where he gets squirrely. It just seems like it all like Dale Sr., except, without that prominent intimidator, really good at restrictor plate, track ego / skill set.
2023, he's battling for the lead coming to the white flag. By turn one, he's in the fence hard. It's just sometimes you want to, and I feel that's the same way for Chase Elliott, right? Like 2017, y'all remember Darrell Waltrip standing there on the broadcast going, no one can catch him. Like no one's going to be able to get a run and get by this guy. There's 3 laps to go. And then he pulls over, he's out of gas. And then, Chase has had other times where it was like, man, he's leading, he's doing the right thing. Or man, he's put himself in position. Even last year, there was a moment where it was like, man, Chase put himself in position. He could win this thing. And then they take the white flag, and it's like, man, there's the 9 doing donuts down the dog leg there. I mean, it's just like, what in the world's going on? So there are guys that you expect to win it and just can't seem to find that luck. And the pressure only builds. So anyways, but those are the things that I'm looking at. Those are the things that I'm getting excited about as I'm getting ready to watch the 500.
I completely get with that. I mean, of course, we'll have Austin talk about the big one, of course, today, but that seems to be always a really big storyline, and you just don't know when it's going to happen. I mean, you can statistically look like, oh, it's going to happen on lap 151, happen on 169 or whatever, but you don't know. It could be the last lap. It could be the middle of the race. You just don't know. But in regards to you know what? I think Austin should go because I talk too much. I need to shut up.
You want me to go ahead and talk about the big one?
Just talk about the storyline that you're really looking forward to the most, and then we'll get to your big one in a little bit.
The big one is the storyline I'm looking forward to the most, so I'll save it.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I think I'm really excited to see all these open drivers. I really am. I think that's, of course, when you're looking at the Daytona 500 or all restrictor plate tracks, those open drivers have the best chance of making a good finish or possibly a win. And to imagine someone like BJ McLeod that's put in a ton of years, had his own race team, done so many things, to think that he might have a chance to win, the 500 of all things. Mathematically, statistically speaking, he has a better chance than anybody else, especially when the cars are wrecking. Your chances only go up as long as you don't get hit. So I definitely am looking towards that, especially with all the legends and stuff. I know Blake mentioned previously, I'll go ahead and I feel like that he would bring this up. How there's 2 different spots essentially where they can be like open drivers, and if they don't make the race, they can get into it. So you have the one that y'all spoke about for Helio, right? And then there's also the one that's like the elite, like the one that has a prominent role in NASCAR. And I mean, Blake made the arguments like, who would you go with between Truex and Jimmy Johnson? Well, all you got to do is look at the rings on the fingers and, but in relevant driving experience, Truex would be the pick. But when it comes down to just straight up statistics and who's done more for the sport, it's hard to argue against the Lowe's 48, Even when it got towards the Ally 48, it's still pretty iconic. But I think that's my main thing that I feel like I'm looking forward to, especially seeing Junior make his first bid for the Cup Series. You don't know how it's going to go, but it's also cool to see Justin Allgaier get his due after spending many years in Xfinity and many underfunded teams on the Cup level.
Yeah.
Like the 51, for instance, I think he drove for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool to see, and I absolutely hope that they get a solid performance from that. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward towards the most. All right, so we're going to move on to the 4 wide segment. Austin, I think I'm going to swap it up. I'm going to let you talk about the big one first.
Okay. Well, the big one is something that every single fan anticipates, every single fan of NASCAR anticipates. It's something every single driver dreads to think about. For those that may not be aware what the big one is, it's sort of a code language that NASCAR fans use to describe the big crashes that happen at plate tracks like Daytona, Talladega, and I guess now you can include Atlanta into that since it's a plate track. But because of the way that drafting works, there's an immense danger of wrecking out in a huge crash. And Kent was talking about how Daytona now has some character to it, and it's not as easy to hold your car steady while you're in a line. I mean, you're bumper to bumper with 35 other cars, and the only thing you can see is a little bit of sky in a bumper. That's all you can see. We all of us here can remember watching Daytona, Talladega. The race is going along fine, and all of a sudden you hear Mike Joyce say, "Trouble in turn," and then just seeing carnage of 12 to 15 cars, and you're wondering, crap, is my driver in that? But the big one that I remember the most recently was when Logano flipped at Talladega and landed right on that weird spot as you're getting ready to. I've never seen him wreck there before. Right before they entered turn 3, they started wrecking. Joey got flipped and actually caved in part of the top of his car. Based off of past trends, that's kind of my thing. It's the numbers, it's the trends, it's the specs. What can we expect as far as trends go for the Daytona 500? So these trends have to be different from the second race that's at Daytona, because 40 laps shorter of a race kind of shifts the urgency a little bit. So I crunched some numbers. I took the last 10 Daytona 500s, not Daytona races, Daytona 500s, as a sample, and I averaged out the average lap of the big one, as well as how many cars were caught up. And I then counted and averaged how many big ones have happened per race. So I did this for 2015 through 2024. So first, how do we decide what a big one is? I consider a big one any crash that contains more than 6 to 7 cars. I would consider that a big wreck. The big one is usually at least 10 cars. At least 10 cars. So let's get into the numbers that I have crunched. The average lap of the big one over the last 10 years is lap 142 of 200. That may come off as surprising. Usually we think the big one happening later in the race towards the end, but it's after halfway in the final stage, and it's around that time, around lap 140 to 150, that's where you want to start making your moves. If you're in the back, you want to start making your way to the front, because you are very quickly running out of time. But most crashes happen either between lap 150 to 180, somewhere in there. That's where the big one happens. And, of course, last lap / overtime. On average, in the 10 races that I took, there are 12 cars per big one. 12 cars included. So a third of the field, essentially. Almost a third of the field. And then we average around 2.5 big ones per Daytona 500. That is wrecks that take in at least 6 to 7 cars. Here are some of the outliers. When you do statistics, you have to factor in the outliers and the anomalies. The latest lap in 2020 the latest lap for the big one was in 2023, lap 204, with 13 cars. Obviously, an overtime finish, which we all love for Daytona. The earliest is lap 15. Lap 15 in 2021. That took out 16 cars. I saw lap 15 and all the numbers that were listed underneath it, about had a heart attack. The smallest outlier for cars is in 2016, which contained no big one. No big one. 2016 contained no big one. There were 3 to 4 cautions that only involved 2 to 3 cars. The largest outlier for cars in recent memory was last year, where the big one involved 23 cars.
Yeah.
Which I remember. So the big one is obviously something that if you're a driver, you have to factor in, because there's only one race in the last 10 years where the big one has not happened. You have to factor it in. You have to expect it. You know it's going to come more than likely later in the race. You're going to have little wreck here and there, but within the last 50 to 60 laps, you know the big one is coming. So my question for you guys is this. What is your strategy? If you had a car and you're running in the Daytona 500, do you take the Joey Logano strategy? I'm running up front. If I'm not running up front, I don't want to be anywhere else. I want to be up front. If the big one happens, I want it to be behind me. Or, which runs the risk of you being the big one if you're running up front. Or do you do what Denny Hamlin does, where as soon as the race starts, if things start looking iffy, he's gone. He's going to the back, and he ain't coming back up till much later in the race when he can get a run. So where would you guys be? If you had a car, you were running in the Daytona 500, would you do the up front strategy from the beginning of the race, try to stay up front if you had a car that could do it, or are you hanging in the back?
It's a really tough question, because I remember as a Hendrick fan in the golden years, quote unquote golden years, Hendricks had many golden years, but when you had Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr., and Casey Kane all together, they used to tandem draft in the back, and they would always get caught up in the wreck that they're trying to avoid. It happened every time.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to split off with a singular car, kind of like how Denny does, he doesn't like necessarily like, hey, all Joe Gibbs guys get in the back kind of deal thing. But it can work, but I feel like you want to be up front. But then on the polar opposite end, you got people up front that historically causes the crashes. Like you get people that are the aggressive pushers like Brad, like Ricky Stenhouse. And if you're not on the front row, even if you are on the front, if you're on the outside, you still get wrecked. So I feel like there's no good way to do it, but I would pick up front, because at least if you're going out up front,
So I know it's not the same, and it's very different, but I remember jumping in to a full-length Daytona 500 on iRacing, and that was a fun experience. I did 2 of them. One of them I wrecked on the second lap.
Typical Daytona experience.
Typical Daytona experience. The second one, it was a couple years later. I waited. I didn't really do a full length. I'm like, if I'm in this thing till lap 180 and then I wreck, I'm not gonna, get
my hands going through the TV.
I'm not gonna get my deposit back on my apartment. So there's gonna be a fix going through a wall. So here's kind of what my experience was that second time I ran it. That second time I ran it, I remember I didn't even qualify. I just started dead last, and I just we ran around in single file. Everyone kind of had the same mindset of let's get to the end and then let's race. But naturally, enough cars kind of spun, and I wasn't planning on trying to get to the front early, but through a little bit of strategy and stuff, I mean, a quarter of the way into the race, I found myself in the top 10, and then just kind of inching closer and closer. And then I just kind of found myself wanting to hang around the front. And the front, you had a few more guys that wanted to just kind of take it easy. And so I probably averaged running position was like 7. Single file, and if you watch the Daytona 500, they're going to do that. There's going to be a point in this race where they stretch out their single file and they're just trying to click laps off. They're trying to get towards the end. Then when it came time to race, I got into when we were coming to the white flag, I got in that bottom lane. Everyone was going to the bottom, and then they'd go up to block, and the bottom lane would surge ahead. And so I just kept staying in there. I was probably 3rd on the inside lane, finally got to the 1st on the inside lane, took the lead coming to the white flag, and I was blocking going down the backstretch. I'm looking up in my mirror. The whole field is just wrecking. And I'm like, that's it. I will win it. This is crazy. I was stoked. But one thing about iRacing is they don't throw the caution flag on the last lap. And I had someone catch me the huge run going into turn 3, and I tried to block, and I got straight up Austin Dillon right into that outside wall. I know how Eric Almirola feels. And so it didn't work out for me, but at the same time, it was like I put myself in the position. So I think there's something to be said about the junior approach of saying, hey, look, I'm just going to try to lead every single lap if I can. That can also get you in trouble. There's something else to be said. Like I've been in those races where I was like, I'm just going to back off. I'm going to let them mess around and do their thing. And then once enough of the, idiots are in the garage, then I'll make my moves when there's a little bit fewer cars on track to make my moves. I see benefits to both. But I was also a Jeff Gordon fan in that 2011 Daytona 500 when you saw all 4 Hendrick cars, except for maybe Dale Jr., who was around towards the end of that race. But you saw 3 Hendrick cars bouncing off each other in one clip right there. And so because they were hanging around the back, waiting to race their way to the front, there are pros and cons to both. But, I definitely understand both.
Yeah, I think Joey, his strategy is run the front, and that has bit him in the rear the last 3 years. Qualifies well, usually on the, Ford in general, usually qualifies well at plate tracks. Last year in particular, he led a fairly good amount of laps, too. He was up front, he was in the top 4, and his car was junk. Yeah, he was caught up in the 23. That's why it was so big. The big one was so big is because it happened right at the front and took out the entire field. I think, how many 500s has Danny won? Has he won 2 or 3? He's won 3.
Yep.
I think his strategy might be the best. If it's hanging out in the back and getting out of trouble and then...
Statistically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then... Go ahead.
I would say that recently it's not worked out real well for him.
No.
And his car, predominantly, he's not been really good at restrictor plates here in the last few years.
Yeah.
It seems like this next gen cars really, really caused him to struggle in regards to drafting and stuff. But go ahead.
No, I was just saying, it does seem like the strategy now that works is up front. That's what seems to be working, and just hoping and praying that you survive. But yeah, that's all I had for the big one. That's just something, if you're a racing fan, it's something that's relevant, especially when you're talking about plate tracks, especially Daytona and Talladega. It's a big part of the storyline because we all know what's coming. It's just what lap and how many.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate all the statistics and all the input that you put in that. There was a lot of maths, and it made my head hurt.
I know. I had to take off my shoes.
Had to put better socks on.
Yeah.
Do that one, I tell you. All right, Ken, I'm gonna let you history away here.
Yeah, and this is going to be something I kind of, toss it back to y'all and ask a little bit of opinion on. Let me pull my page back up here. So let's take a walk down memory lane of what the Daytona 500 experience used to be. Coming from someone who's never been to the Daytona 500 myself, I mean, I've been to Daytona. I've seen the track. I've been on it. I've ridden it, 175 miles an hour, and been in those corners at those speeds going, I can't even breathe. Like, this is so impressive that these guys do this lap after lap, inches from each other. But at the same time, while the Daytona 500 is still NASCAR's biggest event, it's not got all the passion and pageantry leading up to it that it had in the past. You look at some things, they used to have. Do y'all remember Preseason Thunder?
So what year did Preseason Thunder stop existing?
In my research, and I could be wrong, 2014 was the last that I saw. And that was the year that Chase Elliott was actually getting into the Xfinity Series as a rookie. And Bill got into the 5 car and drafted with him in the Nationwide Series. And so I was actually watching the 2013 Preseason Thunder with the Cup guys on the track. They would talk about, some of these guys, like, first of all, when you're Jeff Gordon and you've got the credentials that Jeff Gordon has, you don't show up for Preseason Thunder. If you don't want to show up for Preseason Thunder, you just send, like, Justin Allgaier to go and drive your car for you. Like, you have the privilege to do that, but if you don't have those statistics and that kind of, I don't know, you don't have that resume, then you show up and you run all your laps. You do what's asked of you. So, there were some guys like, I don't know that it was actually Jeff Gordon in the 24 car there at preseason Thunder, but I just remember what it was like seeing these guys get out on the track in the middle of January and race some laps when it's been a few months, you're just craving any type of NASCAR coverage, and you got hours on end of practice laps and single car runs. And then they would go out, hey, look, they're going to be drafting, these teams are going to be running and they're going to be drafting, that sort of thing. And so it was so much fun to watch. And it gave you coverage of any and everything. You got to see a little bit of NASCAR before the season. It just they scratched that itch. And, so that's the first thing that I just miss about it. Second thing, there's a documentary out there, and it's about the 1997 Daytona 500, Refuse to Lose. Look it up. It's about Jeff Gordon's. It goes behind the scenes, Jeff Gordon's experience there in the Daytona 500. It brings some things to light. First of all, they would get to that track. I mean, it was speed weeks. It was just that. It was weeks. They're down there for a couple of weeks. And then what are they doing? They're practicing. They're on the track several days, not just times, not just, you get 45 minutes, 25 minutes. You're going to make sure that your car will crank. No, you're going out there and, hey, look, we got a 3-hour session today. We're going to try to run about 60 laps. We're going to figure out some things when it comes to fuel mileage. We're going to figure out some things when it comes to aero. We're going to figure out some things when it comes to these things. And so, but, not only did you have more NASCAR coverage back then, not only did you have the cars on the track more, and not only did you have guys getting even more experience. I mean, I think some of the moves that they were able to make late those races in the Daytona 500, that made those races great was because they knew their car better than these guys know their car.
And Kent, they practiced drafting too. They got together with the people they wanted to draft with, and they practiced for the big race.
You're absolutely right. And so all that adds up, and yeah, I think it put a better product out there. But you also look at the next gen car. We can all say the next gen has brought some of the best racing. It brought back some racing that NASCAR desperately needed. We can joke about how it's lacked on short tracks. We can joke about how, it's not everything that we wish that it was. But at the end of the day, especially when you look at the intermediate racing, it has brought a lot back. Even in the plate racing, it has brought a lot back to NASCAR. But those cars, they're kit cars. You bring them up, and it's got to be within just thousandths of an inch of what NASCAR says that it should be when it comes to scanning. That they take lasers to those things. They scan them. It's got to be precise.
16 pounds of weight,
Yeah. I wasn't going to do that to you, Cole, but anyways. But it's got to be precise. It's got to be down to, it's a science. And so the engineers today in NASCAR, when they're getting those cars set up, they've got so many things that they got to worry about to please NASCAR to do exactly what they want or what they need to do with the car. And then, it's like, hey, where can we sneak in some stuff? Where can we, like our setup is going to be good, but you really can't sneak a whole lot past NASCAR anymore. The money that's spent is in the setups, but everything is still, you got to be pretty much within, NASCAR has not been afraid to take a trophy away. NASCAR has not been afraid to say, hey, you know what? No, you don't get, not only do you not get the points for this, or we're going to strip you of that, we're going to strip you of the trophy. They used to not do that. Now they're not hesitant. And so it took away a lot of the creativity that you had in the NASCAR Cup Series. And so this documentary that you can watch about Jeff Gordon, Ray Evernham's doing stuff like, hey, look, I've got something on there. Ray Evernham's doing stuff to the car where he knows, hey, if I can sneak this by, we have a good shot of having a fast car. But here's the deal. I'm going to have to do something, a little bit more extraordinary to this side of the car. So that way, when I go through inspection, they're going to go, man, we got you. You can't do that to the car. You're going to have to change that. And Ray's going, man, come on. Let me do that to the car. And in his head, he's going, you got so excited that you got me on this that you didn't even look to see what was under the car. Man, we got it through. We got it past him. Jeff Gordon actually says, he's like, man, if I ever go to Ray and I'm like, man, how did inspection go? And Ray goes, oh, it went great. We got through the first time. Jeff Gordon said, he's like, that's a car that's not going to win the Daytona 500. I mean, it was just all about, there was no, oh man, there's a fine because they didn't get through inspection the second time. It took 7 or 8 tries, but hey, look, we finally got cleared to get on the track for practice. I mean, that's just the kind of stuff that they did back then. There was more room to more wiggle room when it came to the aero of the car to sneak stuff by. You're working with templates, not with lasers. I would love to see NASCAR go back to templates instead of lasers, but that's a whole other conversation for another time.
Did we lose Cap?
But what's that?
You disappeared, Cap. We're like, no, we lost him.
Oh, that's crazy. Y'all disappeared a couple times on me. It must just be my internet. We got that old wind trickle internet. But anyways.
Got a potato. You got a potato as your router?
Yeah, we do.
I got you.
Anyways, but, I mean, there was such an emphasis on Daytona 500 qualifying and what that meant for the manufacturer back in the day. You wanted to bring, hey, look, the manufacturer that won the pole, I mean, it was like, hey, look, we got the strongest engine here. We've got the smartest guys here. And I'm looking at, I was looking at that 1997 Daytona 500. Mike Skinner was on the pole for that race and won the pole for the Daytona 500. You've got, Jeff Gordon, who won it. He started 6th. But they're going, man, we qualified 6th out of, and I had just counted, let's see here, out of, do y'all want to take a guess at how many cars attempted the 1997 Daytona 500?
Go ahead, Austin. I can see it. You got it.
52.
Did you Google that?
Yeah.
Dude, that's spot on.
I think that was one of our trivia questions that we asked ourselves. Not gonna lie.
That's it. So 52 cars attempted. And so you had guys fail to make the race like Mike Wallace, like Joe Nemechek, Chad Little, Rick Mast, And so anyways, that was awesome in and of itself. But to say you were 6th out of 52 going up against, Richard Childress was bringing some of the best cars. Just looking at the field, I mean, it was stacked. I mean, just take a moment at some point, even if you're just listening to this, go back and look at this field. Look at these drivers that were in this field. It'll blow your mind. And then so you're sitting there going, do we have something that's going to be able to win the 500? And it's going to come down to still a little bit of luck back then. But here's what I want to see. And I've said this before. I want to see it become more about handling and who's the best driver. That's what it was in the 90s. It's not that now. It's more about luck. It shouldn't be that way. I'm not saying that there's no skill involved. Obviously, that's not the case. I'm just saying it's a lot about luck. Last year, I may have to say my favorite driver won it. That was 99% luck because of when that flag was thrown. Because he was getting past. Had it been thrown, not even a second later, Bowman's your Daytona 500 champion. So anyways, all that to say, do y'all think that it takes away from the Daytona 500 experience to not have the on-track sessions that they have leading up to it? Qualifying's on Wednesday. It's no longer the Sunday before. Qualifying used to be its whole day. And I understand that day is now the Super Bowl, right? The Super Bowl is the day before, or is the Sunday before. You can't compete with that. But y'all listen, there was a year, and I can't remember what year it was. There was a year that they did qualifying on the Saturday because it was going to line up that way where the Super Bowl was going to be there. I don't know. I loved the fact that it was its own event leading up to qualifying. And qualifying was almost as big as a lot of race days. Does it take away that there's not all that pageantry going into it anymore? They cram everything into 7 days and say, all right, here you go.
Go ahead, Austin.
For me, no. I don't think it does. I don't know. I understand the pageantry and I understand people that may want to go back to that. The several days of on-track practice and whatnot. But when we look at the quality of racing that we have today, it still is good when it comes to plate racing, even though they have less time and less practice. I mean, we still have the duels. You still have practice. You still have qualifying. And I think that's enough. I think it is enough, especially considering NASCAR's kind of in a finding itself again kind of phase. I just don't think it's necessary anymore. Maybe that's just me. I'm not a boomer when it comes to NASCAR, but I think that the Daytona 500 week is just fine without having to add all that back in.
What about you, Cole?
I'll say that I'll never be against more racing. Like, I'm not going to be the type of guy to be like, hey, I don't want to see more racing. But I feel like it has a lot to do with the attention span of people these days. In a world you can listen to podcasts, YouTube videos, regular videos, Twitter clips, Instagram reels. You can watch that all in 5 to 10 seconds. Not many people's going to sit down these days and be like, I'm going to sit down and watch all Speed Weeks. I'm going to take the whole week off. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to watch every single bit of racing, when they can just pull up on the phone and see the highlights. Or, do you really want to watch, let's say, like 125 laps of boring racing? Not everybody does, especially the fans that are not like true passionate 100% into it. They just want to see, hey, who passes who at this critical lap and who wrecks who, and if there's a fight. That's just how it is. And I feel like that is kind of where we're at these days. Like you said, NASCAR's trying to feel itself. It's trying to figure out what it is. It's trying to evolve with the times, and Speed Weeks would be excellent, and I would love to see it come back as a fan that is like, I'll sit down and watch whatever I can. But to those that have limited time, which, you guys would know, you guys work a lot. You guys work on the weekends. You work on, during those practice days and whatnot, you wouldn't be able to sit down and be like, hey, I'll be able to watch all this, So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, and that, that's the kind of stuff that at the end of the day, and I like what y'all said about NASCAR's trying to kind of figure out where it's coming from, right? Like this is the time. There's so many new fans coming into the sport. If you're going to do something new, now's the time to do it. Us boomer fans, we're on our way out, right? Like it's all over. No, I'm just kidding. No, but some of the older group that is really just, they're, man, NASCAR died with Dale, that crowd, that kind of crowd. Austin is losing it again. But that crowd, you're never going to please them. And so to have this new crowd that's just showing up because they like the content that they've been seeing for the past few years. Hey, look, if you can put everything in 1 week. Now, here's a pro to that. That's someone who can, it's much easier to say, hey, I'm going to get off work on, I'm going to get off work on Tuesday. I'm going to drive down Wednesday morning and I'm going to come back, Sunday evening or Monday or whatever the case is, than it is to say, we'll take 2 weeks off to go see everything. So you still get that, ability to be able to see a little bit more of everything and all the action as a fan packed into a tighter period, even though there's still not as much action. So anyways, no, it's all got its pros and cons, right? Like there's 45 teams that are trying to make the 500 this year. That number would be smaller if it was expected of them to spend twice, 3 times as much on gas and tires. Anyways, but now, just from another aspect, what y'all think about, when it comes to just the engineering the vehicles? Should there be more of a leniency in what these guys are allowed to do to set their cars up for race day? Or is it a better product when everyone's driving these kit cars that is the exact same car on the track? Just about.
I have been rewatching the 2004 NASCAR season. I'm about halfway through it. Know that it's different rules. There's no stage break. You have happy hour and, qualifying and practice. And, how the rules used to be for NASCAR just throughout the regular Cup Series. And it's just as enjoyable as a product. Obviously, you have your tracks that are not going to be as exciting. I think it's equally as enjoyable as a product. To a degree, it's nice having everybody on the same page, because then you get what we've had over the last couple of years, where we have a lot of different winners, a lot of guys who would have not won a race under the old way of doing things. But then again, there's just something about, man, just watching, I think it was 2011 Michigan, watching Jeff Gordon's qualifying lap, him rolling around that track at 213 miles an hour. And it's like, man, part of me wants us to get back to that. For the most part, I think NASCAR should allow a little bit more leniency. I don't know about back in the day where you look at the car straight up and it's like yeah, it's all cattywampus. You know, I don't know if we should get back to that much of leniency, but I think there should be more.
Just a fine line that kind of has to be walked, essentially, especially today where everything can be like, you can look something electronically and be like, oh, that's 0.0002% off. So therefore that wouldn't pass. I mean, it's really hard to be able, as technology evolves, so does, guidelines and stuff. So it would be really hard to bring that. But I do find it interesting that you do say that, because Blake's mention on his portion that he wanted to talk about, and I'm going to weave both of ours in here because I got to get booking with this. We're already at an hour and 39. But essentially, the pavement at Daytona is starting to give away. Like, it's starting to become a lot harder, and it's a more abrasive surface, and therefore the tire wear, it's becoming more of an issue than it ever was, which is a good thing for racing in general. That's what Blake would say. And go ahead.
It's better for racing.
It's pretty spot on. But it's not going to be like July hot, like it's not going to be slick. It's going to be February weather. It's going to be 75, maybe lower 70s. And it's not going to be a big issue. But the drafting kind of negates that. I feel like that tire wear issue, where they're able to all draft so closely together, and they essentially are able to conserve everything. So, especially with like fuel mileage and stuff, it's like one of those things that's just really hard to understand. I'm sorry, guys. You guys got to stop. I'm trying to get this on the road, and I just see you both guys losing it. My gosh. But essentially, the drafting and stuff, there's fuel conservation so much where these races are starting to become fuel mileage a lot of times. And it's going to come down to a green flag pit stop. So you never used to see that. Like, people were worried about just making it. But now they're worried about, hey, do I have enough fuel? Do I need to save enough for the 7th overtime like Logano did at Nashville? For his 5th gas tank? I don't know. It's wild.
Was it him?
Inspection.
Well, was it Logano that they asked, like, hey man, how did you save all that fuel? He goes, we were just slow enough. Like, it's like, yeah. So, anyways,
paid off, didn't it?
Yeah.
Hey, look, he was slow enough to win.
Yeah.
It pretty much sealed his deal into the playoffs. Essentially it did. So, and then I'll go ahead and just talk about my aspect of it as well. I'm sorry to just move this along because it's a great talking point and I love it. But I also don't want it to be 2 hours, which is getting pretty close to be. Fan experience at Daytona, if you've never been, amazing atmosphere, highly recommend it. It's not Talladega crazy by any means, but it's, you still got those people that camp in the infield that are die-hard, hardcore fans that have been coming since 1972, whatever. The interactive environment with practice, all the garages you're able to get to them. They're accessible in regards to the cup level, and you're not able to necessarily like be up close and close to the driver because they do have a like plexiglass window in between, but you can still get your autographs and stuff. And the festivities outside in the fan zone, like all the sponsors and partners and stuff that they have going on, it's amazing to see. So I would highly recommend anybody going to any Daytona race. The first Daytona race I ever went to was the July Daytona race, which, holy cow, was it hot. Like, it was ridiculously hot. Also, it just for you guys that, make sure you don't wear slides in the infield to Daytona when it's like 96 degrees, because your feet won't be able to hold on to it very long. At least mine wasn't. I had blisters like bleeding off my feet. I had to go into the sea and just like essentially have like a natural saline wash on my feet. Like, it was absolutely brutal. So don't do that. Be smart. I was not smart. I was dumb. I was young. Most people do more wild stuff when they're dumb. I just did dumb stuff. Like, that's just me. But yeah, that's essentially our two versions combined together. So if you guys have any additional points, more.
I've never been to Daytona, like Kent. I've never been to a Daytona, but just hearing you and Blake talk about your experiences at Daytona, it does seem like it's unmatched as far as what they offer for fans and just the facilities that they have there. I mean, it is the world center of racing. So if you're going to boast a title like that, then it needs to be good.
What about you, Kent?
I got nothing to add.
You don't
No,
got
that's
nothing?
I got nothing. No, when it comes to the atmosphere there and everything, I can't speak to a whole lot about the about just being there and what that's like and that sort of thing. I can't really speak to the whole what it's like to take in a race there because I haven't. But I can say there is something about even showing up to that place when there's not a race scheduled for months. It feels. I mean, it's just crazy. It's different. It's different. I mean, Austin said World Center of Racing. I mean, when you drive past it, I mean, it's right off the road. Right off the road. It's massive. Absolutely crazy. And then when you get to driving around, at least when I was riding on the track, all I'm thinking of is, man, this is, I mean, in one moment you're going, man, this is the corner that Dale was in when he hit the wall. And it's going through your head. You're like, man, I mean, what a pivotal moment in the sport of NASCAR. And then in the next moment, you're crossing the stripe and you're going, man, this is where Jeff Gordon came across when he won that third Daytona 500 in 2005, holding off Kurt Busch. There's just so much history in that place. I remember, coming off turn 4, riding with them, and you're just thinking, hey, this is where Trevor Bayne crossed over and blocked Carl Edwards in 2011 to become the youngest winner. Again, so many things that happened, and it's a place full of history. So I'm looking forward to one day being able to take in a race there. I want to. I've got some friends in my church that are driving down to go and take in the experience. They're taking their 1-year-old who will now have attended more Daytona 500s than I have. And so anyways, but I'm looking forward to one day being able to go and experience a race there. But having toured it, having seen some of the behind the scenes stuff that you might not get to see on race day, and having ridden around the track, it is something that it's special. And so I'm looking forward to that aspect of it come race day.
I guess my main thing is like, people are like, it's the Daytona 500, but it's not just the Daytona 500. It's the Daytona 500 championship. It's not just a race. You have the Southern 500 champion. You got the Daytona 500 champion. Those two are the crown jewels. They are huge milestone events, and there's many drivers that, when they retire at the end of the day, they look and they're like, I didn't win a Daytona 500. That's like a big gripe. Same thing could be said about the Southern 500. There's not a lot of people that can say that, and the people that are good at plate tracks are always good, and the people that are not so great, they can make their way up there sometimes, but it's a struggle. So I would implore you, or I would suggest, if you've never watched NASCAR, if you're going to watch your first race, I would recommend a plate track, and I would say Daytona 500 has to be that first race because it really sets not just the atmosphere for as a fan, but for the schedule. Like, it sets the tone.
If I had to recommend a Daytona 500 to go back and watch, the 2007 Daytona 500 is one of the best of all time.
It's a classic.
It's a cure to male loneliness.
All right, so we're going to finish this podcast up with our championship picks for our Pick'em series. We're going to talk about the Xfinity and the Truck Series next week, also with a bonus episode, kind of like a guide, a fandom for the NASCAR fans. We're going to try to make it for like beginners, essentially. But we will talk about Xfinity and Truck because they've not released anything for Truck or Xfinity. And if there's anything additional for the 500, we'll make mention of it.
Real quick, Cole, can I explain how our Pick'em thing goes real quick?
Please do.
So this is a competition I started originally. It was just me, Kent, and Blake, and then we added Cole in last year. So it's just the 4 of us. But the way it works is each week we pick who we think is going to win the race for that week. The caveat is you can't pick the same driver basically in the same month. So if I pick Brad Keselowski for the Daytona 500, I have to wait a whole month basically until I'm able to pick him again. So you have to strategize, be careful about who you want to pick. Point system's pretty simple. There's 4 of us. Win the race if your driver either wins the race or comes out on top of the rest of the drivers. You win 4 points. If you're second, you win third. If you're third, you win 2, and if you're last, you win 1. And that's kind of how it goes. They accumulate. We don't count the All-Star race. And what we decided to do last year was throw in a little caveat, a little extra to make things potentially closer in the end. But we do a championship pick. The winner, if the person picks the correct champion, they win at Phoenix at the end of the year, they get an extra 10 points on top of their already accumulated points. We have tiebreakers and stuff. I have tiebreakers and stuff in place. Thankfully, have not had to use those yet. But yeah, that's kind of how the format goes. And whoever comes in last picks first. And so for the championship picks, Kent, unfortunately, finished last year in our competition, but he gets to pick first. He gets the first championship pick. He gets the whole field.
I was just in it for the first pick. Then I did the typical. I pulled the Atlanta Falcons move. I tanked for the first pick, and maybe it'll pay off. See, I'm probably just gonna tank again, to be honest.
So yeah,
but
that's
anyway.
how our Pick'em series works. So yeah.
This year you also are going to include stages, right? You're going to include
Yes.
an incentive for stages. So.
Yes, 1 point per stage win if your driver gets a stage win.
So it's essentially like how NASCAR gives the 1 point for whoever has the fastest lap. It's kind of the same thing, except you're going to have multiple points because there's multiple stages.
Yep.
But Kent, I mean, I'm so ready to hear you pick. Oh man, I would try to pick like a random driver, but I'm just gonna let you go ahead and do your thing. I about know who you're gonna pick. So
obviously, Shane Van Gisbergen in his rookie season is going. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
It's too late. No take back.
Dadgummit. No. So I'm gonna say a name, and when I say this name, I'm really not gonna have to elaborate on it because everyone's waiting on him to win his second championship. Kyle Larson. No said.
I think if you had number 1 overall pick, you got to be crazy not to at least consider taking Kyle Larson.
Absolutely.
He's the clear favorite.
I mean, like I said, I think everyone's waiting on that second championship to come. So, I know he wasn't in the Final Four last year, and that was a shock to many, but I think, like I said, I think it's just a matter of time. He's going to go down as a multiple champion.
Last year. He did it to himself last year.
I mean, he was just a couple of water barrels short and a wall short. I mean, that's basically what it was to make it in the Final Four.
That's tough. But that's what Kyle Larson, enough said.
Yeah, that's fair. So I'm next, and I think that Penske continues their domination this year. And I believe that Ryan Blaney will get his next championship. I feel like you would be absolutely idiotic to not consider him in the top 2 picks, especially how well he does at the back end of the year. He may not always be the best at the very start, but when it comes to, for instance, the cutoff race this year, Talladega. Who's one of the best at Talladega? Ryan Blaney. So, I feel like I would do myself the disservice of not choosing him. I will say, though, if I was, a little bit later in the lineup, I would have considered picking Denny this year because I think eventually, statistically, he's got to have one, right? I know is it Mark Martin the one that didn't win the championship?
Yeah, Mark Martin never won.
So it's really rare for something like that to happen, and I don't see that happening for him. So I think he does eventually get one, but hey, the clock is ticking, so it would be better this year than any year.
Yeah. All right, I'm next. It's not an even number year, so I'm not going to pick Joey Logano. But I'm actually a little disappointed that Cole took Blaney because that's actually who I was considering. I did not think you would go with Blaney. But
who did you think I was going to go with?
I thought you were going to go with Bell or Byron.
Byron disappointed me already. I can't do it.
Yeah, I'm not picking Byron, but the Blaney pick is a really good pick. Myself, I'm going Bell. I'm going Christopher Bell. I think after the heartbreak ending to Martinsville, which he was in the wrong, Blake. He was in the wrong for riding the wall there. But had he not done that, he would have advanced into the championship 4 more than likely. and we know he does well at tracks like Phoenix. He's been in the Final Four twice already in the 20, and he just gets shafted by his pit crew. But I think this is the year. I think he's the year. I think he had the most second place finishes of any driver last year. He's really consistent. There's not really a track that he is bad at. He can run short, he can run intermediate, he can run road courses. Not so good at plates, but in my opinion, next to Larson, he's one of the best all-around drivers out there. So Bell is going to be my pick.
But very much similar roots to Larson, dirt track guy, Bale, dirt track guy. Just overall good wheelman.
Yeah, I think really smart people pick Bell from time to time. Who let me down a little bit last year. And Bell was one of those names, even with the first pick, that I went and really had to think about for a while. And honestly, you know, Ryan Blaney was almost the name that came out of my mouth. And then you look and you see the 5 name, and you're like, man, it's available. You gotta take it. So
I get it. I will ask a clarification for Austin here. Can you pick the same driver
back to back years?
Yes.
No.
You can't.
No.
I feel like you should be able to.
You feel like you should?
Yeah, I mean, for the championship.
Okay.
Because Blake.
I second that.
Because this is his list right here, guys. Blaney, number 1.
Larson,
number 2. Reddick, number 3. And Christopher Bell, number 4.
All right, I guess.
So that only leaves 1 for him.
Yep. That's hilarious.
I mean, we all think the same, which, I mean, of course, I had the little cheat sheet to see what he would pick, but, like, logistically thinking, those are the top 4 drivers, and I look, I'm like, they're young, they're passionate, they're winning races consistently. I mean, those are the 4 picks that most people would consider. But, of course, there's always that dark horse at the end of the year where, you know, you get thrown out of a playoff spot and someone gets put in there and then they win the championship. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah. So, yeah, but so you are okay with that. Fine. If not, I will get another person for him.
That's fine. We'll roll with it. Both of y'all are okay with it. It's fine.
Are you okay with it? It's your series. So.
It's fine. He's not going to win this year anyway, so it's okay.
Oh, man.
Bold take.
Hey.
Man. Hey, he's unbannable.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Maybe he'll wreck somebody like Austin Dillon did, and maybe they'll suspend it for a week or something. All right. Well, ladies and gents, this is going to conclude the 2-hour-long episode for what? I'll try to cut some of it if I can, but I find it really hard to because everything we talk about I feel like is relevant to everybody. So, you know, I can't say this is going to be a podcast for someone that wants to sit down and hear everything in 45 minutes. I won't apologize for it. I feel like we just have a good time. So,
sorry, Brett.
I can't even say sorry anymore. He's going to be a guest on that freaking podcast at some point. So, I mean, what does it matter? But next week we'll kind of work on that fan experience, essentially, episode along with the Xfinity and stuff, which will be shorter. So, I mean, y'all look forward to that, you know, you people that want it to be, 45 minutes. But, anyways, any last comments before we move on, guys?
Go Dogs.
Second.
Am I lost? I thought they kind of lost.
Hey, we're SEC champs, baby. We're SEC champs.
We are SEC champs. Yes.
That's better than what most people could say.
Yeah.
So.
It just means more.
That's right. I mean, it is.
It's like having
it's like
the free version of the national championship.
Okay, I got you. I thought you said it. I thought when I heard you, I thought you said, "Oh, it's like heaven." I was like, "Really?" That's a bold take. Bold take. We will actually put our spicy takes off till next week for the Daytona 500. So, all right, ladies, gentlemen, and squares, Ecuadorians, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful week, and hope to see y'all here next week for our fan experience episode. See you guys later.